Now, and welcome to the Modern Day Talks podcast with Moilana Chirema, where we discuss various topics. For today's podcast, we're going to be discussing about dating in your 20s. Yes, dating in the modern day, featuring Wendy and Admire, two of my good friends. Even though Wendy is not feeling well today, but Admire, having said that, how would you describe the modern day dating culture in a few words?
Well, I think I have a lot of words for that. But basically, I'd say it's meeting online, dating multiple people at the same time, and using social media basically as a tracking tool to see what's happening, what's where, who's he with, who's she with. It's very interesting, I would say.
Yeah, it's a bit interesting, to be honest, because now we use like social media not only as a tool to communicate, but then, you can also see who the person is with on social media, right?
Definitely. I think that maybe from the people that they follow, the people that they interact with, you definitely see that there is something. So if you see people following each other, definitely there might be something. There's a potential of something happening, something romantic, something brewing up, some intimacy, some love.
Okay, maybe liking pictures as well, or like commenting, right? It's like that one you like clearly see that always something that we from.
On that one, definitely I would lie, because I have had multiple people having different views on that topic. Some people saying liking a person's pictures makes you seem thirsty.
Really, I've never heard of that. For me, I view the liking of pictures as a form of social media engagement. So I think it should just be viewed as one, not as a form of, like flirting and so forth. For me, I like anything, like any post that, I find appealing and anything that aligns with my views. But according to this article, it says someone liking your old pictures and commenting on your stories, small forms of flirting on Instagram.
Some say you should like and express yourself. Some say, no, I don't like, just keep quiet.
Are you speaking from a stalking perspective? Like
Yeah. That's really a big thing in the modern dating culture, whereby you stalk a person. We call it looking up a person in a nice way, but
wow, it's my first time actually like hearing this, like looking up. You say it's looking up what?
Yeah, people actually say I was looking them.
Looking them up.
Yeah.
It's like stalking, but
Stalking. You go to their Instagram, you try and find their username. You go to their Facebook, trying to find their username.
Like our generation, do we use Facebook though? Because I didn't use Facebook myself.
Well, I guess it depends on the country that you're in. Different countries use different social networks.
But then, no, I'm saying like our generation, like Facebook is like, I've seen people say no to Facebook, no to
actually still use Facebook. I've met a couple of people who are actually more interested in using Facebook as a chatting tool, especially Facebook Messenger is more popular.
But then to which generation, like millennials?
Yeah,
like Gen Z? Okay, so here's the statistics that was conducted in 2022, which shows the generation with the highest Facebook users, which is the millennials, Generation Y, but the people born from 1981 to 1996. It says that 87% of millennials use Facebook as a chatting tool.
So networks for Gen Zs would be Snapchat, Instagram.
Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok as well.
Yeah, TikTok as well. But most people don't really chat on TikTok. It's rare to find people saying, oh, we met on TikTok.
I think the older generation, because I've read a couple articles, people narrating how they met, their partners. And then, some say, oh, I met him on Facebook. He liked my picture. And some say he tweeted my tweet. I met him on Twitter, and some on Instagram. So I think, people actually meet on this the social media apps.
People who meet online usually don't last that long. From what I've seen.
They do admire, they do. Like, I've seen people get married, actually, that have met. According to Stanford Institute research, 73 to 83% of the modern day couples actually met online.
I didn't really know much. But what do you think are the main relationships that exist in the modern day?
Well, I would say, they new technologies just coming up, in the modern day. For example, I just like the word friendness. You know what's a friend?
Friendage.
Friends with benefits.
Friends with benefits.
Yes.
Well,
And
can you explain a bit about friends with
so it's like you are not dating, you're actually friends, but then you're being intimate with each other.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It is, right?
really
And we also have no strings attached,
Yeah, that one I had of it a lot. Nowadays, it's a very common one. You hear a person saying, "Oh no, we're not in a relationship."
So that actually means that there's zero commitment, when it comes to no strings
But
attached.
do you believe it is not strings attached? Do you think it
No,
actually?
I think one person ends up getting attached one way or another. I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
Okay. So you don't believe it, not strings attached. How about the hookup culture? Do you think it works?
The hookup culture is a culture that encourages casual encounters, including one-night stands and other related activities, without including emotional intimacy, bonding, or committed relationships, or even long-term relationships. So, it's just a culture that allows, more or less intimacy and supports uncommitted relationships. So it's like a hookup and it's just like one night stand. There's nothing attached to it. And according to my own understanding, well, I would like to define the hookup culture as just simply hooking each other up, dating from a friend of a friend.
Doesn't that lead to situationships? I've had people actually use the phrase situationships, whereby you meet maybe a friend of a friend, and one thing leads to another, and it becomes a so-called situationship. Have you heard of that?
Well, I don't really know much about this situationships, but I know it's not like a relationship.
Yeah, so let me try maybe and explain. It's more like we meet each other, right?
Yes.
And we're interested in each other, but we don't want a relationship. We're both lonely at the time, but we want to be intimate. We want to have fun. We want to do everything that happens in a normal relationship. We want to go on dates. We want to go out, but we don't want to put a title on it. So it's a situation because we're both single and lonely at the same time. So we call it a situation. Since we have both a similar situation whereby we want someone to...
Oh, you want lonely?
Yeah. So, but we don't want the commitment. So we just call it a situation. There's not really
there's zero commitment, right?
Zero commitment, but we do everything that happens in a normal relationship. Yeah, I think it's very disappointing from my point of view, because why would you actually do everything that happens in a relationship and say you don't want to be in a relationship?
You just don't want the tag that you are in a relationship. I think it happens a lot in our generation, that the tagging part, okay, they just want to have fun without the tag.
Yeah, so I think that leads to the question on what is the difference between old dating way and new dating way, the modern dating as we call it, the 21st century dating. What would you say is the major difference?
Well, I think there's a huge difference between, the old way of dating and the new way of dating, which is the modern day, and how actually people meet in the modern day is different. There's a huge difference with how people used to meet back in the days. I think it was more or less like face-to-face interactions, and people used to meet, through this, maybe friends, or even, I think, planned marriages, or even, these social gatherings like weddings and, churches, libraries, and so on. So, and now in the modern day, it's more or less online interactions. So it's just like swiping and, Instagram, social media as well, all other social media apps. And also just that, it's virtual. I think, but then back in the days, I think there's a huge difference between it was more or less about face to face. which I prefer myself. I think it's very important for one to meet someone, face to face and just interact. And, I think having conversations in a relationship is very important. You have to be with someone that you can actually, have a conversation with. That reminds me of my grandparents' love story. I'm a huge fan of their love story, how they met, and the conversations they used to have, the chats, everything. My grandmother used to narrate the story of how she met my grandfather to me, I think back in 2005. I was about 5 years old around that time, but you could tell with the look in her eyes that she had actually met the love of her life. So yes, admire the old way of dating and the modern way of dating are two different things. I would say they're like parallel lines. I think in the modern day, it's about swiping, and then you see this person, the person is asking you, what's your Instagram? What's your Instagram name or something like that.
Then you chat for 3-4 days and then boom, you're in a relationship.
But is it a relationship though?
Well, that's what people call it. And they'll tell you that I found the map of my life within 3 days of using social media. And I think the other major difference between the old ways and the new ways of dating is how fast intimacy comes up.
That's very true, Admire. I think, that's the huge difference as well between the modern day dating and the old way of dating. And, because that part used to be reserved for marriage.
People don't really wait. They're no longer patient enough. People don't wait. They meet today, tomorrow they're intimate. And they're not using protection.
Well, frankly speaking, Admire, modern day relationships are more based on intimacy, not the actual dating part. Multiple discussions and debates have been going on online. People debating on that, there's no modern day relationship without intimacy, which is so sad. Like they say, you should never stop dating your partner even after getting married. As a virgin myself, I've also encountered, those people that, use those arguments trying to pressurize you, to engage in that side of the relationship, saying, oh, there is no, relationship without intimacy in the modern day, blah, blah, blah. You meet someone today, the next thing is they want to hit it off.
Yeah, definitely. That's what people are out for nowadays, And that leads to a question for you, right? So what do you think about getting tested for STIs and all those other type of diseases that are involved in sexual activities and intimacy?
Well, I think it's a very important question, Admire, especially in the modern day. I've heard conversations with people my generation, also millennials, right? The Generation Y. And, those people that are born from 1981 to 1996. And I remember one person saying that, oh, I don't use protection with my partner, so I was very eager to ask, so I asked this person, I said, oh, so that means that you're only seeing your partner, right? And then Admire, the answer I got actually shocked me. The person said, not really.
I've had similar people tell me something that was very shocking to me.
My face dropped. I think that, it's very important that in this modern day, especially when it comes to dating, one should stay vigilant. And by this, I mean that you need to take care of yourself. Because if you don't, and nobody will, your health as well, because like you mentioned, I think it's very important that before, being engaging in any physical or any intimacy, it's very important to get tested.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. Very true. Because you never know who the person you are with, where they've been, what they're doing with, who they're doing it. So it's very difficult, especially with the term being the streets are very dangerous nowadays. So it's very tricky.
You're right on that one, Admire. I watched this YouTube video whereby this guy was, referring to the modern day dating culture as the jungle.
The jungle, because everyone acts like animals nowadays.
I think
that's bad for me to say that, but I feel like, as you have already said, that people don't really wait for marriage. They just want to drop into intimacy. Have you ever seen a dog when it's time for that month whereby everyone is time for mating season. It doesn't really think, it just jumps into it. I think that's why people are calling it the streets, the jungle.
Well, I think you are right on that, Admire. And I think also it all comes from like, with this new like terminology and not, wanting to use like these tags and just like, living, like a scot free without like, like defining anything.
Yeah, very true. People don't want to define things. I think it's because people have got more options from how I see it. People have got a lot of options nowadays. They've got vast options, especially for ladies. I feel like it's more prominent that they've got more.
Oh, I think it's not even for ladies. I think it's like both. Like I think all sexes have like a lot of options in the modern day because there are a lot of like dating apps. So it's not only like women. So I think men as well.
I once read an article which said 80% of the women actually swipe left for guys, and guys swipe more frequently right than they.
But then, but you have to tell me, like, what's the difference between swiping left and swiping right?
Oh, so swiping left is basically saying no.
Swiping left, swiping right, and then
there's a lot of dating apps nowadays, So I feel like it creates opportunity.
Maya, I have a question for you. Would you agree with the notion that the modern day generation has a lot of options when it comes to dating?
Well, I feel like it's both true and false at the same time. It depends on the angle which you're standing at. If you're a person who doesn't use dating apps, who doesn't use social media, I feel like the market will be very thin for you.
You think like your options are a bit limited?
They're very limited because nowadays people don't really talk to each other and people are meeting online. They don't really approach people. If you ask most of the ladies, when last were you approached by a guy? They'll tell you, I've never been approached. Some of them will even tell you, I haven't been approached in the last 10 years. And it will be very normal because they are used to meeting people online. They don't even know how to respond if a person was to actually approach them while they were walking in the middle of the street. They would actually take that as harassment, as person harassing them, and a possible suitor. I've actually had multiple people saying that someone harassed them because they actually came up to them and tried to talk.
I think it all goes down to, the approach that one chooses to use. But however, I think everything that has an advantage has a disadvantage as well. With the dating apps, they provide us with a wider selection, and also with like the social media apps, with just how the world is connected at large, like how you can communicate with people from all parts of the world. Just touching on the, dating apps and social media, I think, there's a wider selection for everyone.
From a smaller perspective first, for example, do people perceive women in a certain way as compared to men, like in terms of behaving, especially in the modern day dating society?
Truthfully speaking, Admire, I think this has been long existing from the dawn of time, from the beginning of time. I remember reading an article that was written by a woman that was born in the 1970s. And she talks about how now, the modern generation is meeting online. During her time, meeting online was seen as like a taboo, or women were perceived as the women that were using our dating apps around that time were perceived as being wayward or something like that. So yeah, I think even now with the modern day dating apps and social media, I think you can actually see how it's a bit different when it comes to even posting pictures online, the scrutiny, the verbal attacks and so forth. I think so much goes on. And I think, it's very important to note that, I think it has been existing, it's there, Admire, it's visible, and, we see it on a daily basis. Maya, you have seen it also, whereby one is trolled because they are dressed in a certain way. They post a picture and then the picture is like trolled, or you're putting, you have too much makeup on, you don't have makeup on, you should look natural, or you should put on makeup, or you should do this, or you should dress like this, or you're dressed like this so as to you're trying to gain attention, and so forth. And then, people being called all sorts of names. So yeah, it actually exists, in the modern day on social media as well. About the question you asked me earlier on, my favorite generation is Generation Y, which is the millennials. It's the age group from 1981 to 1996. And I think this generation, I felt a stronger economy among all the generations. And also, in as much as technology was already there, but then, there was limited amount of technology around that time. And they also had still had this face-to-face, interactions, and, more sustainability, I think, and less, uncertainty as well. So Generation Y, the millennials, it is. Okay, and Maya, so if you were asked to describe the word love in the modern day, what would you say?
I'd say it's a conditional feeling, whereby if the conditional feeling ceases to exist, the love fades. So I don't know how much you agree with that one, but I've heard the term wifey material being tossed around.
Well, I think we'll have to talk about that in our next episode. Like, really, I think the term wifey material, I don't have anything against it. But I think, have you ever also realized that the term wifey material is used more than the term husband material?
Yeah, I've actually heard of it. I've actually had people using the term wifey material more. But at the same time, I've had other expectations of people. As you say,
I think that
topic for
another,
wider,
we have
wider
to
spectrum.
talk about this in the next episode for sure, because I think there's so much to cover on this topic. And I also think that this topic is more gender biased.
It depends on which side you're looking at it from.
Because the term wifey material is used more than the term husband material. The last time I had, the term husband material being used was in 2010, and I was about 10 years old. And, I think it was on national television. I don't know what they were talking about, but then they were also using this term husband material. And, with the term wifey material, I think I can even say it's overused. Because you even see on this reality television shows, like this dating reality television shows, it's always wifey material. And believe me, you even when you're having a discussion with someone, it's always wifey material. It always pops up. So I think you can actually see that there is some bias if the other term is used more than the other. Even with my friends, my classmates, my cousins, we don't use that term. I don't know. I've never had, anyone close to me use that term.
For ladies, most of the time, they don't use the term husband material. They just describe the person. As compared to men have got a generic preferences, they say, is wifey material. If you actually ask them to define it, they'll give you a similar explanation. As compared to women usually go ahead and describe a guy. I want a guy who does this. I want a guy who...
But same as men as well. Same as men, I've heard men say that I would like a woman who possesses this attributes. I would like a woman who cook, who can clean. The list goes on. That reminds me of my brother. He has a list of 8 qualities that his future spouse should possess. And, I remember telling him that, hey, I think you should actually tick the ones that you possess, yourself. And then I remember calling him the other day and I asked him, so, hey, how many of those qualities do you possess, yourself? And he said 10. Just 10 out of 80? It's not even a quarter.
Not even half.
Yeah, so we can imagine, that's what I'm saying, that I just think that, wifey material or husband material, I think there's no problem with someone saying, oh, I would like this, like I would like, my wife or my husband to possess this, like, qualities. But the thing is, the person also have to be, also have to possess those qualities that they're looking for. I think that's the safest.
I think the only way we could summarize modern dating would be it's very influenced by social media. And there's a lot of peer pressure coming from all sides. Like you have already said, people have unrealistic expectations of things that they themselves cannot provide, or they themselves do not have attributes that most people will not have, the average human being. I think people over-expect things that no longer exist and forget that we're actually human.
Absolutely. One should never ask for what they cannot give out. I think instead one should work on self-development in attaining those qualities and things that they're looking for, in other people, other than constantly, requiring others to be perfect. Key closing remarks, Admire. Maybe some advice.
Well, I'd say stop listening to social media a lot.
What? For me, I think what I can just see is abstinency.
Abstinence.
I'm not saying this because I'm like, not sexually active. I'm a virgin myself. But, on a serious note, if you cannot abstain, then make sure you protect yourself. And, just make sure you use like contraceptives.
Yeah.
And also, lastly, I think, always get tested before indulging in any, like physical or intimacy with anyone.
True,
Very
true,
important.
very true. That's very important. And I know most people will take it personally when their partner actually asks them, let's go get tested, let's go have our health checkups. But it's a very important factor in your relationship, which will determine if you guys will go for a long term or what will you guys do in the future, because you don't want to put yourself at risk and other kids at risk, You just want to level the playing field.
But I think it's very important as well, Admire, that you mentioned that, some people are not comfortable, getting tasted. But for me, what I would advise, someone on that is that never do something to appease someone at your own expense. Because at the end of the day, you were, like just going in for it without like getting tested so as to like, to appear more like you're accepting to the other person. No.
Very true, very true.
So I think that never, never, never do something to appease someone at your own expense. So having said that, don't forget to share your modern dating experiences, guys, in the comment section if you are free to do so. And also maybe you can just add the topic you would like us to discuss in the next episode.